So thank you to everybody who sent me feedback. It was fantastic. And if you haven't sent me feedback yet, or you don't know what I'm talking about, I sent out an email yesterday, I think, or the day before, asking for feedback on just the masterclass, everything. And I asked people to unload and really vent and just let me have it and tell me everything that you would change, fix, upgrade, get rid of, whatever, because I want to make this awesome for all of you and everybody else who will join in the future. So some of you sent me a lot of feedback and it's great. I've read through all of it at least once now. I've read some of it 2-3 times. I've discussed it with one of my business partners, and we're going to be implementing some changes based on the feedback that we got. So there are some changes coming down the road. I'm not sure exactly when, but no matter how it rolls out, we want it to be an upgrade and make things better. So some of the things have to do with accountability. That was a big request from a number of people, is just feeling like they want some accountability built into the system. So we've got that coming. We've got some ideas there that we think will be helpful for that. Also, just more attention from me, from other people that are in the group is something that we're looking at. Getting more people into the group, we think we've got a way to do that, because part of this is just, excuse me, part of this is the phenomenon of the gym membership. If you know anything about how the gym membership works, 90% of the people who sign up for a gym membership are not going to the gym 6 weeks later. That's just reality. That's how it works. That's how gyms make money. Because if everybody actually showed up who bought a membership, then they'd be too full. They would lose money. It wouldn't be profitable for them. So they bank on that. I'm not trying to bank on that. I want everybody to be active in this group. I want every single person to be active. And we have over 60 people who signed up for it, but we've got about 10 people who are really showing up and being active. And I want to figure out, number one, how to get people to be more active in the group. But number two, I also want to figure out how to get more people in the group, because I know no matter what I do, we're not going to have 100% of people active all the time. Some people have very good reasons for not being active in the group, because maybe they signed up and they said, hey, I want to sign up now because I want to get the special pricing, but I'm actually going to write my book next year. So they were already planning on being busy and not being active in the group. And that's fine. That's okay. And there are other people that they joined and they meant to start writing a book, but then they got a new business deal or they merged with another company and they just don't have the time to dedicate to anything else. People get sick, people get injured, things happen. I get that. And no matter what we do, those things are going to pop up. But we want to increase the number of people who are being active. What I don't want happening is, one person wrote back to me and said, yeah, I meant to be active, but I got busy. And then I kind of felt like I was dropping behind. And I thought, oh, there's so much material to catch up on. We don't want that happening, because people should feel comfortable to jump in anytime and get restarted and not feel like they're behind. So we don't want things like that happening. And so we're going to be rolling out some things that hopefully will fix that and help people be more active, but also help more people get into the group, so that whatever percentage it is of activity that we have equals a lot of people showing up and a lot of people being excited and participating. So we're going to be rolling some of those announcements out over the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. You'll have to excuse me today. I'm clearing my throat a bunch. I'm not sure why. Might just be the dryness here or something that's kind of come through, but excuse me if I'm muting and clearing my throat. Let's dive into the questions for everybody today. So first one here, Danny asks, is, quote, professionals who happen to be business owners in Utah with less than 50 employees and 1 million to 10 million in annual revenue too broad of a target market? Let's think about that one. So Danny's looking into his ideal audience here. So professionals, business owners. I guess you could drop off professionals who happen to be, you could just say business owners perhaps. And business owners in Utah with less than 50 employees and 1 to 10 million in annual revenue too broad of a target market? Maybe. I mean, you might be able to niche that down somehow, because of course the goal we're going after here is we want people to read this and say, hey, that's me. So I have a business that's doing between 1 and 10 million in revenue, and we have fewer than 50 employees. And I'm not in Utah anymore, but I used to be in Utah. And so when I read that, yeah, I think if I'm looking at that for myself, I probably wouldn't say, wow, that's me. I'd say, yeah, we fit into that. So here's where I would look at this and say, as somebody who fits into that or has fit into that in the past, where I would look at that and say, it's a little bit too broad. The first thing is the 1 to 10 million. That's a broad range. If it were 5 to 10 or 1 to 3 or 3 to 5, that would already make it feel a little bit more relevant, because there's a big difference between $1 million business and a $10 million business. There's a big difference between a $1 million business and a $3 million business. I know from experience, it's a huge, huge shift that takes place when you go from 1 million to 3 million. So, and then less than 50 employees, that's kind of a big step there too. And so the question here would really be, what are you really getting at? What is it that makes the client unique, that they fit into? I mean, what is it about a company that has fewer than 50 employees that makes it ideal for you? What is it about the company that's between 1 to 10 million that makes it unique for you? Are there more details that you can bring out of that so that somebody looks at that and says, hey, that's me. That's exactly what I'm dealing with. So for example, one of my mentors told me that a lot of businesses go out of business between 1 and 3 million because they go through a lot of shifts at that point. And then when my business went from 1 to 3 million, I saw why so many companies go out of business, because things change. You have to hire 2 people to do a job instead of just having 1 person who does each thing. And when you're going to 3 million, you're also going from, when you're going from 1 to 3 million, you might be going from 5 employees to 15 to 20 to 30 employees at the same time. And when you go to like 20 or 30 employees, you start all of a sudden having HR issues, and you have to buy software and services that you didn't have to buy before. And you used to be able to just manage everything on a spreadsheet. And now you have to go to something a little bit more complicated, whether it's for accounting or CRM. There are all these issues that you're dealing with. And so there are very specific niches that you can dive into and say, I help people make the leap from 1 to 3 million. A lot of entrepreneurs who are dealing with that leap will relate to that and say, hey, that's me. I'm going through that right now. And so that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that there are factors for these businesses that you can call out that are going to make it connect more with your ideal audience. So Danny follows up. He says, I want my book to result in people hiring me as an EOS implementer. For those of you who don't know, EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating System. It comes from a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, which is a fantastic book. Every entrepreneur should read it. We use it in my businesses. So he says, I just want my book to help business owners realize and embrace much faster that if they don't have an operating system, that is the root of most of their problems. Is this okay? So, yeah, so I think if so there might be some, again, I'm going to keep going back to this book a lot. I'm almost done with it for the second time, Hook Point. So, I mean, we're talking about your hook point here, Danny, right? Right. So this is a book that you would want to read. Everybody should read it, but definitely you, Danny. I mean, this is what you're trying to create right now, is your hook point as you work on your ideal audience. And we need something that hooks that audience, that tells them this book is for you. This is a book that you need to read. And I think the 1 to 10 million is a little bit too broad. I think the 0 to 50 employees is a little bit too broad. And I think if you narrow that down and say, I'm going after businesses that are doing 1 to 3 million and have fewer than 10 employees, or fewer than 15 employees, I think that narrows it down a lot more to where people would say, yeah, that's me. That's the business that I've got. And then if you write your book for that audience, the 0 to 15 and the 1 to 3, then I think you end up getting a lot more business because people will sense it. They'll see it in all the content that you've really created content specifically for the challenges that they face, because the challenges a $3 million business faces are completely different than the challenges a $10 million business faces. I mean, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of the same problems, but there are a lot of problems that are completely different between those businesses. And if you can tap into that and show that I am excluding the $10 million problems because I want to focus on the audience with the $1 to $3 million problems, when they see that you're addressing those problems, they'll say, hey, this guy's got content for me. If you try to appeal to everybody, it's going to come across more as he's kind of writing for a general audience. And so this is generally helpful. And that's not what we want. We want them to say, this is specifically helpful for me. I need this information. Hopefully that helps. Okay, Sue, this may have been asked before. When do you copyright your book? So, okay. I'm looking something up real quick here online. So, if you want to, because there's a blog post about this here. How to copyright a book. Okay, I'm going to post this in the chat because for anybody who has this question, this is like the comprehensive answer on how to copyright a book. And you can copyright your book really quickly, really easily. This is not, now there's copyright and there's registered copyright, but then if you don't really need to do the, I mean, you can register your copyright. If you register it, then it goes on the public record as being a public work. It's out there. And I'm looking at the post here. Yeah, go read the post. There's a bunch of information in here. If we went through it all, it would take about 10 minutes to go through. This is the easy answer. I'm going to leave it there. Go read that post, that link that I put in the chat if you want to learn about copyright. That's the best way to look at it. And then let me know if you have any follow-up questions based on what you read in there. Leif, what are your thoughts about crowdsourcing a book? In other words, put parts of the book up on the internet, social media, and allow others to contribute content. It depends what you mean by crowdsourcing. So if you mean I'm going to ask 5 questions, have a bunch of people answer those questions, and then I'm going to compile these and put those into a book, something like that, then it's great to crowdsource. However, I wouldn't put it out on social media. I would be reaching out to the people that I want to be part of that book. If you put something up on social media and you allow others to contribute content, the issue you run into is that people will contribute content that you don't want to include in the book. So what's your process of saying no to people or ignoring them so that you're not putting that content in there? However, if it's just, hey, I'm writing this book and I've got this part, and if you have any input or any ideas, let me know your ideas and they might get included in the book. If that's the way you're going about it, great, because then there's no expectation that you actually will use what they say, but then you might get a bunch of content and then you can pick and choose. And if there's something useful, use it. If it's not useful, don't use it. Let me know if that answers your question, Leif, or if you have more of a specific scenario that you're looking at with that. But I would never guarantee anybody that you're going to include whatever they send you in the book. Nobody, because you will get crazy stuff from people. I mean, when I wrote my first book, I was doing interviews. And so, but I chose the people so I could do it that way. But if you're soliciting openly for people to send stuff in, just make sure you don't you don't make it seem like there's a guarantee that their stuff will get into the book. Gene, just published the workbook using Amazon KDP, which I've got it. It's right here. It's on the shelf behind me in the white section. And it looks really good. I was so surprised. I said this in the Facebook group, but it's amazing to me that when I was growing up, if you wanted to put a workbook together like this, then you had to go to Kinko's. first of all, you had to do a bunch of work on your computer, and it was hard and everything looked bad back then. Then you went to Kinko's and you gave them this file, and they would print it out, and everything was low res and grainy and blurry and stuff. And it didn't look that good. And half of it would print wrong. And then they would put this spiral binding on it. And it was like $2 per page for color laser printing back then. So you would spend a ton of money, like $100 to print one of these things. And then you print like 20 of those, and you go to a business presentation, and you just hope that you land a deal that pays for the $2,000 you just spent on these 20 things, these 20 workbooks. And then you don't land any deal, and you're like, great, I just spent $2,000 on this not so great looking thing that I had to spend hours putting together at Kinko's. And now you can do all the graphic design work more easily, and you send it to Amazon, and somebody buys it, and you don't have to pay a dime until they buy it. And then Amazon just takes their commission out of the price of the product. So you're not really paying anything ever. And then it ships, and you don't have to take care of shipping or any of that stuff. And I got Jean's workbook, and I'm like, this actually looks pretty good. This looks great. I'm excited to get my workbook out there because I saw the quality of what Jean's was. And this is like so easy now and so cheap. It's great. So Jean's question, why wouldn't I just publish a softcover book on Amazon as my first publication? If I go this route, how would it affect my eventually publication of a hardcover book? So you can totally do this, Jean. So you can publish now I think it's nicer to publish the hardcover at the same time, everything up there, hardcover, softcover, audio, everything at the same time. That's my preferred way of doing things. I'm not into this hardcover for 6 months and then the soft cover thing. I mean, that's the way it used to work. That's the way traditional publishers did it. So that tradition is hung on, but there's really no great reason to do that. So I prefer to just release everything at the same time. I like buying hardcover if it's cheaper or about the same price as the soft cover. And some people feel that way. So there's some people who like hardcover. Some people, they don't care about hardcover, or they might even prefer the paperback. But I figure give everybody the option, let them buy what they want, start out that way. That's how I do it. Or I would say you can just do softcover and never do hardcover. Because Amazon doesn't do hardcover is the whole challenge here. So you have to go through Ingram Spark if you want to do hardcover and distribute to Amazon. Now, there's nothing to say that you can't do softcover and then work later on the hardcover through Ingram Spark. And whenever it gets done, and then it's available. No problem. You can do that. So there's not a wrong way to do this so much. There's just preferences in this case. So if I were in your shoes, Jean, and I was just trying to move as quickly as possible and get stuff out there, then yeah, I would do that. I would do what's easiest. I'd get the soft cover out there through Amazon KDP. And then later, if I felt like it, I would go over to Ingram Spark and I would do the hardcover and distribute that too. But maybe you'll just decide, I don't need hardcover. It's not a big deal, and never do it. A lot of people do that. A lot of people just figure, hey, I've got soft cover out there. It's fine. It's getting the job done. And so why bother with hardcover? But it will not affect whether you can or can't do hardcover or anything like that. Sue, the importance of networking has been huge for me. I've been networking for many years, and as a result, all of my stories are coming from the people I know and people that they know. I've not advertised at all. I know that this will be different for my next book starting in July. It has become quality, not quantity. And I'm not sure if you had a question there, Sue, or comment, but that sounds great. But then you said, I have decided to have a workbook to go along with my book. I do not want to call it a workbook, companion guide, or discovery guide. Any other suggestions? Yeah, if you don't want to call it a workbook, companion guide, discovery guide, can I think of any others? I'm sure there are like 10 other terms that you could use for that. Workbook, companion guide, discovery guide. Anybody else have any suggestions? Put them in the chat for Sue. I'm kind of drawing a blank here because the word workbook is stuck in my head so much now from working on a workbook. So I'm just like, workbook, workbook, workbook. But if any manual, Elenia says, that's another one. Yeah, companion guide, companion guide, discovery guide they sound friendly, don't they? They sound kind of nice. And to go along with your book, Jean says blueprint. Yeah, I mean, guidebook, that's good. That's another one. Handbook. I think these are all good suggestions. I actually like companion guide or discovery guide best because I feel like it goes along with your topic, Sue. And it sounds friendly and you want to be friendly. You are friendly. So it goes along with your personal brand and everything. Okay. Jean, who would release the audiobook? Also Amazon? So there are a lot of different options here. Audible is the largest distributor of audiobooks. You've also got Scribd and then Apple audiobooks and everything, but Audible's the big one. So, and they're owned by Amazon. So if you're working with Audible, you're working with Amazon, but there's an entirely separate system that you're going to go through to work on the audiobook, and it's called ACX. So I recommend that you just you can work with other people and other companies to do this, but I would recommend that you just go with ACX. It's acx.com. I'll put the link in the chat anyway. There you go. So, and I do not know what ACX stands for, but so ACX is where you can find voiceover talent and, oh, hey, there's people I know on the ACX homepage. That's fun. So this is where you can find voice talent, and it's kind of like Amazon KDP. They have their whole system. You just follow the steps and they will tell you how to produce and upload and do everything that you need for the audiobook that will go along. And then it will show up on the Amazon profile on the same book page. It'll show up there with your printed book on your Amazon profile page or your Amazon book page. So now something interesting to go along with this is that a lot of you might be looking at hiring a narrator to do your audiobook, but then you start figuring out, wait, this is going to cost me $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to have somebody narrate my book professionally. Maybe I'll do it myself. Wait, I don't want to do it myself. I don't know how to do it. It's too much trouble. It's a pain and everything. And so there's an interesting thing that just came out or is just coming out now, emerging, and it's Google's AI reader. So I'm going to, there's a great podcast I listen to, but I'm going to paste in a blog post. This just pulled up, so it might not be the best blog post, but it looks like this guy knows what he's talking about. But essentially, Google has developed artificial intelligence that is good enough at reading text that it can read it and it sounds like a human being. It's pretty good. And people are starting to use this to narrate their audiobooks, completely automated, no human being involved. And yet it does emotion. It's good enough at this that it's pretty good. And it's only going to get better as time goes on. And so this is a real issue for professional narrators. It will always be better, I think, to do a professional narration. Well, I shouldn't say always. 10, 20 years, Google might be good enough that you really cannot tell the difference between Google's AI narration and a professional narrator. And in fact, it'll probably get better at some point than a real human being doing it, because humans make mistakes too. But this is pretty incredible stuff, and it's an amazing development in terms of technology. And I don't know what the pricing is. It is not free to use Google's service, but I suspect it's quite a bit cheaper than using a narrator. And it might be good enough for you. You might listen to it. It does 220 voices in 40 languages. So also, if you want to do multiple languages of your book, you can do multiple languages. So, I mean, it's kind of incredible that it can do this already just out of the gate. But yeah, 220 voices, 40 different languages, and it sounds pretty good. Go check out the, oh, I didn't paste in the Google AI reader link yet. Let me send, I'll paste this link in. Here we go. Okay. I linked to the blog post, but here's the actual link to Google's AI reader. So you can go there and try it for free and just listen to different voices, and you'll be amazed that this is a robot. So anyway, Danny, do you have a cost-effective approach to reading a ton of books? When you say reading a ton of books, do you mean like for you, you want to read a ton of books and you want to do it cost-effectively? Let me know if that's what you're asking. Meanwhile, let me answer Jean's other question real quick. What's the downside of publishing the audiobook as podcasts? The main downside is that it's not going to be where people expect to find it. If you have an audiobook, people expect to be able to find it on Amazon and Audible. And if it's not there, then they just assume it doesn't exist. They're not going to go search for the podcast. Now, you can do it on Audible and as a podcast too, if you wanted to. I don't think you're going to get, well, you might because you already have an audience, but most people aren't going to get the distribution or the audience or the exposure to their book through podcast channels, not in the way that they would on Audible. So my book, Chief Marketing Officers at Work, it came out 2016. To this day, the Audible version outsells the print version all the time. Every single month, I get a check for the Audible version of the book, and it just keeps coming in. And sometimes it's bigger checks than I've ever gotten before. So it's just very steady. It's not that much. It's like $100 to $200 a month I'm getting. But for a book that's that niche and hasn't been promoted at all or anything, that's pretty good. So $100 to $100 every single month for years. And you're not going to get that from doing a podcast either, because podcast is going to be free out there. So, yeah, distribution, exposure, but you could always do both. Okay. So Danny, yes. Do you have a cost-effective approach to reading a ton of books? Yes, that is the question. So yeah, Scribd is the cheapest way to read a lot of books if you like audiobooks. So I put the link to Scribd in there because it's spelled kind of weird. So Scribd is like Audible, except it's all you can eat. You can listen to as many books as you want, although you can't really. They tell you you can, but you will run into limits. So if you're trying to read 20 books a month or something, you can't, it'll tell you, oh, this book isn't available. What they really mean is it's not available until you renew. I think it's $8 or $9 a month. So it's cheaper than Audible. You get more books, but you don't get quite the selection. So there is a little bit less selection on Scribd versus Audible, but they have a lot of stuff. So I have an account for Scribd. I have an account for Audible. I always go to Scribd first. And if the book's not there, then I'll go to Audible and I'll get it there. But I would say 80% of the books that I want, I can get on Scribd. And so I'm saving a lot of money because I'd be paying $10 per book on Audible, whereas I'm paying $8 a month on Scribd. And if I listen to 2 books, I'm already saving money on Scribd. And if I listen to 10 books in a month, then I'm saving a lot of money because I'm getting them for $1 a piece or something. So that's how I do it. As far as Kindle, you can sign up for Kindle Unlimited, and then you can read a ton of books that way on Kindle. As far as print books, library, that's the only way. So that's how I do it, is mostly audiobooks. In fact, I don't read, I probably own 50 books on Kindle, and I don't think I've ever read a single one. I just don't read stuff on Kindle. Some of those books I bought because I wanted to reference them and I wanted to be able to copy and paste something out of Kindle, or I needed to find an answer. So I needed to search through the book to find a certain quote or something. And it was worth it to me to buy the Kindle version just to find that quote and be able to do a keyword search versus flipping through a 400-page book looking for it. But yeah, I have a lot of Kindle books. I don't read that way. That's just me. Okay. We're out of questions. So what else we got? What can you throw at me today? While we're waiting for more questions to get in there, I'll give you, okay, some of the changes that we're bringing to the masterclass. I'll give you some of the ideas that we've been talking about. And these are things we've discussed before in the past. We've just decided now we're actually going to do it. And one of them is doing breakout sessions. We talked about this before. Also going to the format where we actually do see each other. I'm just going to go for it. I've said in the past that it becomes unmanageable if you have too many people and you get people talking and they don't have the volume off or whatever, but we're going to go for it. We're going to try the face-to-face thing instead of this one-way thing. So if you have questions, then you'll be able to click that button that says raise hand, and I'll be calling on people. And so we'll have live questions rather than the typed in questions. We'll do breakouts. And so we'll say, all right, we're going to separate into groups of 3 for the next 15 minutes. Each person take 5 minutes, talk about what you're working on, the challenges you're facing, and what you're going to accomplish by next week or by the next time we do this. So we can build some accountability into it that way. That will be one way that we build accountability into it. We'll also have a focus person, which is something we've talked about before. So have somebody set up ahead of time that is going to come with their questions, and we really focus and deep dive on that person and the questions they have and what might be hanging them up, whether it's cover design or getting started or whatever. But we'll have a focus person and really dive into them so that everybody can learn from going through that one person or their experience. And then we'll do some Q&A just like we're doing now as well. So these are some of the things that we'll be looking at doing. And I really want to push peer coaching, but some people brought up peer coaching in their feedback. Peer coaching is tricky because if I do assignments on peer coaching and I say, all right, you and you're matched up. Well, what if you don't like that person? Or what if the person doesn't respond to you? Or what if that person is saying, oh, wait a second, I'm not ready to work on my book yet. I didn't want to be involved in it. So we can do something and say, hey, who wants to be part of peer coaching? Great. And we can make assignments that way. I think the best way to do it is actually if you find somebody that you connect with and say, hey, do you want to work with me as a peer coach and we can help each other? I think that's the best way that these relationships happen. And then if anybody says, hey, I want a peer coaching buddy, I want an accountability buddy, but I don't know who to reach out to, then we can help you to find somebody perhaps. Still working that out. But those are some of the things that we're looking at doing. So, all right, I got a yes with a bunch of exclamation points from somebody anonymous. But so somebody likes some of these ideas. So, but what other questions do you have? Otherwise, I'm going to have to share more stuff about what we're thinking about for the master class. So, okay, I'll share some other sneak preview stuff while you're getting your questions in there. We're also changing the mastermind, which nobody is in right now, and we're going to make it more accessible for everybody in terms of pricing. And it's also going to change in terms of its time format. So right now, the mastermind has been, there's a very large separation between the mastermind and the masterclass. And I want to shrink that a bit. So right now, the mastermind has been 30 grand for a year, and there's all sorts of stuff thrown in. We're doing PR, we're doing all sorts of services, editing, all sorts of stuff that we threw in there. We're going to strip out a bunch of these services. You'll still be able to get these services. It will just be extra stuff that you can pay more for if you want it. But we're going to launch mastermind groups that are going to be a maximum of 10 people per group. And they're going to be much more affordable than 30 grand, a lot more affordable. And it's going to be 6 months instead of 12 months. And it's going to be 10 people per group, same 10 people. And the only catch on these is I'm not going to be running them, but I think that's actually a benefit maybe. They're going to be run by Jess, who's my business partner in Published Author, and he's my executive coach. That's how I got to know him, was he started coaching me several years ago, and he became a business partner now. And Jess is incredible. I'll say this, he doesn't know as much about the publishing industry as I do, but he knows a lot. And there are a lot of things that he knows about publishing that I would say his opinions are actually better than mine. So He's perfectly qualified to lead these mastermind groups, and I think it'll be an improvement, and these will be much more accessible for people. So if you're saying, hey, I would love to be part of a group of 10 people, the same 10 people for 6 months, and there's a higher level of accountability and getting to know people better, then stay tuned. We'll be releasing more information about that soon. All right, Danny's got a question in here. One important aspect of my target audience is to target business owners who are not great business operators, like a financial advisor who wanted to be independent, so they had to start a business. They didn't start a business because they are a great entrepreneur. I'm not interested in helping serial entrepreneurs that are just dang good at building and running businesses. Your 1 to 3 million in revenue idea, excuse me. Your 1 to 3 million in revenue idea is interesting. Maybe I just go with that. But are there words I can use outside of revenue size and employee count to describe that business owner who is not a great business operator? Make sense? Thoughts? Yes, that does make sense. And of course, you don't want to say, I help business owners who are not very good at running businesses, right? Because nobody wants to admit to that. So how do you kind of get that point across without making people feel bad for wanting to work with you? Although some people have figured this out, right? I mean, there's that For Dummies book series that it has like 2,500 books in that series, and they've made, I don't know, $100 million off this book series or something since it launched. So sometimes you can do that, but in most cases, it's hard to take that kind of stance. So what kind of words would appeal to somebody who says, you know, I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm running this business because that's the only way to do what I want to do, is to run a business. Maybe you could actually say it that way. I work with business owners who don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. Or what's a fast way to say that? It's kind of like, I have a lot of people, I came up with this sentence, or rather somebody in one of my masterminds came up with a sentence, or maybe I came up with it. I'll take credit for it. I think I came up with it. But this idea that there are people out there who want to be authors, but they don't want to be writers. And most people think you have to be a writer to write a book, but of course you can go hire a ghostwriter and then you're not the writer, but you are still the author. And there are people out there who they have a business, or they want to be a business owner, but they don't necessarily want to be an entrepreneur. The way that we think of an entrepreneur in popular culture today is the startup entrepreneur type of thing, high growth. It's like, no, I just want to I want to run a lifestyle business. Maybe there are people out there who they want to run $1 million business. They want to run a $2 million business. They don't want to grow from 2 to 20 million. They don't want to deal with all that hassle. They just want to run their comfortable business that's highly profitable, and they're saving up money and they're preparing for retirement. They're good with their $1 million business. So there are a lot of people out there like that. And they would say, I don't really see myself as an entrepreneur so much. I'm a business owner, but they don't identify with entrepreneur as in what you see in Forbes or Inc. or Entrepreneur Magazine type of thing. So there are a lot of those people out there. And yeah, the question is, how do you come up with the right words that would trigger them so that they say, hey, that's me. I'm a business owner, but I'm not an entrepreneur. This is a good question. I've got to think about this, Danny. I know that this will help though. So this book will help you work through this a bit. I don't know that's going to give you the answer per se, but this is what this book is all about, is figuring this stuff out. What are the words that you need that will hook your audience and get them to say, I need to take a closer look at this book or what this guy's got. So, okay. I'm going to think about that, Danny. I'll keep pondering it. I know you've sent me an email too that I need to respond to, so I'll take a look at that as well. All right, we've got 10 minutes or so left. Who's got other questions? Where are you getting hung up on your book? What questions do you have? How can we help you move along? cover design, writing, getting started. I know there are people who are still getting started, and that's totally okay. And there are people who are stuck in the middle, and there are people who are trying to wrap things up at the end. Another change I'm looking at with this group is that I know one of the problems with this masterclass, nobody actually brought this up, but I know this is an issue, is that there's a ton of content being created in these weekly Q&A sessions, but then it's impossible to find it later on. So maybe you've watched one of these and you're like, oh, I know Josh answered this question, but I don't know how to find it. There are 30 videos out there, and how do I actually search through these videos and find the answer to that question? Forget it. I'll just ask it again, or I won't ask it, or I'll go find it somewhere else. So there's a new tool that just launched a few months ago out there called Searchy, and it's made for membership groups like this. And my understanding of the tool is that it makes the video searchable. I think it actually cuts it up. It does transcriptions automatically. There are a bunch of things in there. And so I'm looking into this to see, I don't know if it's like a retroactive thing. I assume it is, because I can stick the video up there. But I think it will, I mean, what it advertises itself as is that it makes the video searchable so that you can find answers, which I think would be very valuable for this group. And so that's another change that we're looking to bring. There's a lot more to Searchy than just that. It's an actual membership platform and stuff. So I need to figure out how I would use it exactly and integrate it into what I'm already doing with Kajabi. So, but anyway, that's something I'm looking into as well to improve this. Okay, Gene, do you know if I can use Amazon to send someone the workbook at cost? So you can use Amazon. So you can do discounts on Amazon. As far as at cost, I think you can discount it. This is a good question. And I know that my wife knows the answer to this question. If she was here right now, I could just ask her. One second. So I know you can discount it pretty far. I'm not sure if you can discount a book all the way down to where you're getting 0 and Amazon is still getting theirs, because of course Amazon is getting their cut and there's their cost. I'm going to have to do some more research on this. Anyway, I know you can discount it to a point. I'm not sure if you can get it down to exactly cost or not. So I'll look into that. I'll get back to you on that one, Gene. Nicole, I'm back to square one. My first idea just isn't the right book. Looking to start over with a new workbook. That's totally fine. Other people have done that. This guy that I had on a few weeks ago, who's in the mastermind, Ben Ward, he came in and he's like, I know exactly the book I'm going to write, and this is not that book. So he went back to square one and he wrote this book instead of the other book, and he had to start all over from scratch. Totally fine. That's what we're here for. I mean, this is good, right? If you decide that the book that you wanted to write is not the right book and that you should write another book, that's good. That's progress, because now we're going to get the right book written. So Nicole, yeah, his talk really inspired me. Great. So yeah, don't be afraid. I mean, if you're in the middle of your book and you're feeling like it's not the right book and you really should be writing another book, drop it. Stop it right now. Let's get started on the right book. Because if you're stuck on that book and you know in the back of your mind it's not the right book, you're going to run into writer's block. You're going to spend a lot of time trying to crank it out just to get it finished. And it's going to be a slog, and then it's not the right book. So you're not going to get the results that you want. So let's stop that book. We can always come back to it later. Let's start over. Let's get the right book written. Don't be afraid to just postpone it. You're not throwing it away. You're not dropping it. You can always come back to it later, but let's write the right book first. So, all right. People keep wanting to know about the workbook. I'll give you the link to the working copy of the new workbook right now, so you can see where it's going and what's in it. Just bear in mind, like, this is the working copy. So I'm going to give you the link right now in the chat. And so this is not done. It's not finished. There are changes even being made at the beginning part. There are things I'm going to be adding in. A lot of it's the same. There is some new stuff. There's quite a bit of new stuff, actually. So I'll put this in the chat right now with the link so that it should make a copy for you. Somebody click on that. It should pop up and say, do you want to save a copy of this to your Google Drive? If anybody has a problem with that, let me know. And let me check the sharing settings real quick just to make sure that. Okay. Yeah, the privacy settings are set so that anyone on the internet with this link can comment. And I do welcome your comments. So, well, the link I gave you should make it so that you make your own copy. So if you make comments in your copy, I'm not going to see it. But let me do this. If Shlomo says it's okay. All right. So this link that I just gave you, it's the exact same link. The only thing I changed was the other one says copy on the end, and this one says edit on the end. You can't edit the doc, so don't worry about that. But you can leave comments. So if there's something that you want to comment on that you say, this is too wordy or confusing or whatever, you can leave comments in the workbook for me. And I would love to hear your comments on stuff. So feel free to comment away if you'd like to. And I'm working as hard as I can to get this thing done. I just hired a cover and interior designer to work on the workbook to make it look pretty. So they're not going to work on the Google Doc. They're taking the Google Doc and they're going to design the whole thing. So they're going to make it look super nice. And by the way, just full disclosure, it's going to cost me about $3,500 to do it because this is going to be about a 500-page workbook when it's done, unless I edit it way down, which I might, especially if I get comments from people saying, get this purple gorilla story out of here. I don't like the story and it's taken up 5 pages. So we'll see what the actual page count ends up being, but this is already 322 pages. And I know there are 50 to 100 pages that I still need to add to this. And I think these Google Doc pages are going to roughly be page for page what we see in the workbook. So there's a chance, I think it's going to be pretty much page for page. So the page count in the Google Doc is probably going to be pretty close to the page count in the workbook. So anyway, so I'm giving you full transparency here. You have access to my rough draft of the workbook. You can see the comments. You can see my wife's feedback. She helps me a lot with editing and proofreading and stuff as I go through the book. So you're seeing everything here. I'm showing you behind the scenes. You know what I'm paying for the cover design and interior design. The interior design is what's really costing the money because the designer is going to be laying out every single page of this workbook. So I actually think I'm getting a really good deal on that because, man, I was worried she was going to come back and tell me it was going to be 20 grand or something to do it. And then I'd be like, oh man, I don't know about that. So, all right. So go check out the workbook. Let me know what you think. Bear in mind, there are still changes coming along. I'm still editing this thing. And we're at the time here. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to a bunch of changes coming down the road. And we'll talk soon. If you've got more questions, put them in the Facebook group, email me, and we'll get them answered. Thank you. Talk soon.